Call this meeting of Lima City Council to order. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the invocation by Councilor Glenn, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
All minds clear. Heavenly Father, Lord, we think we come together tonight, Lord. Bless every city council and all our administration, including our mayor, Jesus. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Nieper, Mr. McLean.
Here.
Mr. Lowe.
Here.
Mr. Tebben. Miss Adams.
Here.
Mr. Glenn.
Here.
Miss Townsend.
Here.
And Mr. Nixon.
Here. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. President. I move to add Vicki Sherells to privilege of the floor, who will be speaking on South Side conditions. Is that correct?
Cheryl.
Cheryl Allen. Okay.
Is it?
Second.
The motion and the second is to amend tonight's agenda by adding Vicki Sherells under privilege of the floor. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Scheduled public hearings.
Vacation of the Fisher Alley in the 200 block of East, that should be read East Wayne, petitioned for by the city of Lima, Ohio. Notice is hereby given that on the 5th day of August 2013 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers located at 50 Town Square, Lima, Ohio, a public hearing will be held on the following matter. Vacation of Fisher Alley, approximately 16 feet wide and 182 feet long, that runs north from the 200 block of East Wayne Street and ending at the green space adjoining City Utility Customer Service parking lot, McHenry's Edition, Plat Book 1, page 19. Purpose is to combine the unutilized alley with adjacent City of Lima property. This proposal was initiated by the City of Lima, Ohio, and has been recommended and approved by the City Planning Commission. Any interested person or persons desiring to be heard on said matter may do so at the time and place herein specified. The reports, maps, and other documents pertaining to the above request are on file in the office of the Clerk of Council and are open to public inspection.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the issue of the alley vacation known as Fisher Alley? The second time, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the issue of the Fisher Alley vacation? Third and final time, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the alley vacation of Fisher Alley? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Next, the privilege of the floor, Vicki Sherells.
Mr. President, Honorable Mayor, and distinguished elected members of the City Council, I wanted to come to you to kind of just update you on the status of the Cheryl Allen Southside Community Center now that I have completed my 8th month as Executive Director there. It's no secret that the center was at its worst possible moment when I took the job. It had lost the funding, support, and place of honor at almost every level. Some of the hardened attitudes were rightfully aimed, but some of those were rumors that were disguised as facts that did just as much damage to the real issues that served to drag down long-honored names like Church Women United and Cheryl Allen herself. When I accepted the position, I vowed to myself to do everything in my power to return those names to positions of dignity they once held. It's been a tough sell. Losing the financial support of the United Way also meant being looked upon as a less than worthy organization. And even now, I feel the pull of those who believe that the center is not worthy of their time or their efforts. But that being said, I wanted you to know that due to some new and renewed partnerships like Superior Credit Union, Husky Energy, Procter & Gamble, St. Rita's, Tom All, Dominion East Ohio, and most recently, Happy's Pizza, we are heading toward a solidly based future. Individuals have stepped forward to volunteer and take on added responsibilities regarding the upkeep and the tender loving care that the center itself so desperately needs. Our outreach to the depths of the South Side residents cannot be matched by any other organization because it's who we are, it's where we live, and we have all agreed that we will work together to create a way for us to become self-sustaining. We have to do it because even after only 8 months, I am tired of begging. Our programs are strong. Our commitment is great because it is forged out of love for our families, our community, and our city. The programs will continue with or without monetary support because we need the programs to be there. Our ties with the Ohio Benefit Bank, the Social Security Administration, West Ohio Food Bank, and Community Financial are helping us to weave a solid tapestry of safety in which the families of the South Side can begin their ascent out of poverty. We have fundraisers planned to sustain us as we continue to build the foundation for our future. On August 29th, Happy's Pizza will hold a Slice for a Cause, donating a portion of the proceeds from each sale to the center. On September 7th, there will be a Jazz on the Rooftop, and they've chosen the Cheryl Allen Center and the West Ohio Food Bank as recipients for that event. We hope that the community will embrace these efforts and save their judgments just a little while longer. In just a few weeks, Archie Griffith and the Ohio State University history buff Lee Collier will join us as we proudly present our first Halcyon Project scholarship winner, who at 12 years old is our first success story. For those of you who believe in us, I say don't give up. It is worth the effort, and we will get there. For those who don't believe, all I ask is that you don't stand in our way. And to the family of Cheryl Allen, I promise you, we will make the center a place of which she would be proud. So thank you for allowing me to share our continuing story. All of you are invited at any time to come and engage with our community and join us as we work to make the South Side strong again. We are here to serve our community, and we do it every day, one family at a time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn.
I just got a couple things that everyone put on record. She do not get a salary. She's been doing this for 8 months, free, and work around the clock. And we're blessed to have someone like that because we don't have money for a salary. And some people say, Deary, how she make it? Blessing, somehow the board get together and give her money. But she don't have a salary. And that's hurt to say that because I know she do the pride she take in this job. And we shouldn't be in that situation. Everybody got a story to tell. I can tell a story about it. He can tell me a story about it. You put it all together, it won't equal to nothing. We just need to wake up. We got these babies down there trying to get things going on. That's the only thing on the south end of Lima that can help people. I understand health partnership, super. But dealing with the kids, we need some down there. And I think I've been saying this for day one at City Council. But we are in the right direction. I know we're going to move in the right direction. I know we're going to be a good place to go for the kids. I appreciate Councilman Nieper, Councilman Adams for helping us when we need help.
Mm-hmm.
Them councilmen came out and did things there. Thank you guys so much. It's hurt right now because I know how them babies are needing food when we don't know when the gas bill will get paid. When you make a phone call to us, we ain't enough money. Everybody calling each other at work saying, you got 20, you got 50. Yeah, that's what we go through. And not spraying no dirty laundry. Just to keep them kids down there and keep food going in there Tuesday and Thursday when you have a record number of folks come down and getting food. When Vicki called and said internet service going off, I'm at work thinking how we can get the internet back on. My wife said, Deary, you're finna retire. You better watch how you spend money. But them kids come first down there. And it's always going to be the same way. We're going to keep on fighting, and we appreciate everybody who take part in it. Just take part in it. Give $1. Give whatever you can give to keep that center going. Let all that negative stuff out your mind. I can let negative things come to me every day. I still help people. I help folks to work at 40 Gym Motors. Don't bother me because I'm going to get the blessing. I will get the blessing. When I got 3 kids, a school teacher, I got a blessing. They're not in prison, so I got a blessing. So that's what we keep doing. Vicki, thank you so much. And I hope I ain't overtalk myself because you need to know, people need to know you do it from your heart. You don't know how you're going to pay your gas bill, but we'll figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Thank you. The consent calendar.
Mr. President,
Ms. Townsend.
I move that item A on the consent calendar be received, filed, and approved.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive, file, and approve item A from the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 1.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to place demolition assessments.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that communication number 1 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 1. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 2.
From Chief Hefner regarding legislation to apply for the Ohio BWC Safety Intervention Grant.
Mr. President.
Mr. Glenn.
I move that communication number 2, receive and file legislation on night agenda.
Second. The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 2. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 3.
From the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding a new permit to TLD Ohio Inc. at 701 West North Street.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe.
I move that communication number 3 be received and filed, and the clerk authorized to prepare the necessary legislation for the Ohio Division of Liquor Control with no objections.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 3 and to authorize the clerk to notify the Ohio Division of Liquor Control of no objection. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 4.
From the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding a transfer to Linda Coburn at 139 East Pearl.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe.
I move that communication number 4 be received and filed, and the clerk authorized to file with no objections to the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 4 and to authorize the clerk to notify the Ohio Division of Liquor Control of no objection. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 5.
From Alfred Montgomery regarding a request for a moral obligation claim.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that communication number 5 be received and filed and referred to the Public Works Committee.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 5 and to refer it to Council's Public Works Committee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
2 ayes. Townsend.
2 ayes?
McLean.
Okay.
So 4-2 does not work.
2. The motion does not carry as it failed to get a majority. Communication number 6.
From Chief Martin requesting legislation to use funds from the Law Enforcement Trust Fund account.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn.
I move that communication number 1, receive and file, and send to the law director to prepare the necessary documentation.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 6 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 7.
From Chief Martin regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Reineke Mazda Nissan Inc.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn.
I move that communication number 7, receive and file legislation on night agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 7. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 8.
From the Director of Utilities regarding legislation to incorporate the new U.S. EPA industrial pretreatment streamlining rule into the city sewer use ordinance.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that communication number 8 be received and filed. Legislation's on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 8. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 9.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to place real estate tax assessments.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that communication number 9 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 9. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 10.
From the City Engineer regarding the West Street Bridge load limit.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe.
I move that communication number 10 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 10. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 11.
From the Director of Public Works regarding legislation to enter into a contract with the ASC Group, Inc.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that communication number 11 be received and filed and authorize the law director to prepare any necessary legislation.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 11 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 12.
From the City Engineer regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Bluffton Paving.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that communication number 12 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 12. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 13.
From the Director of Public Works regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Human Supply, Inc.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that communication number 13 be received and filed and authorize the law director to prepare any necessary legislation.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 13 and authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 14.
From the City Engineer regarding legislation to enter into a contract with West Erie Realty Solutions.
Mr. President,
Ms. Townsend.
I move that communication number 14 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 14. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 15.
From the Finance Director regarding legislation for budget amendments.
Mr. President,
Ms. Townsend.
I move that communication 15 be received and filed. That legislation is also on tonight's agenda.
Second. The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 15. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have reports of committees, the Community and Economic Development Report. Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Community and Economic Development Committee met on July 22nd at 6 p.m. in council chambers. The subject was junk abandoned autos, and the purpose of the meeting was to hold open discussion with the large landowners, parcel owners in the city. The council clerk sent out 16 letters, and we had 3 in attendance. Discussions followed on various subjects and for understanding, and ordinances were passed out for information. There were some other discussions that occurred on the $50 fine, and going forward, that would be assessed. And then, because we had updated the Ohio Revised Code to reflect, or we had updated our code ordinance to reflect more of the Ohio Revised Code standards that were required, the committee was done with this issue in our committee, and was then a motion was made by the chair and seconded by Councilor McLean, the committee member, to forward this on for financing to the Finance Committee that is chaired by Councilor Tibbin. That motion was carried, and then it was followed by a motion to adjourn. Mr. President, I move that the committee report be received, filed, and approved as read.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive, file, and approve the committee report as given by Councilor Adams. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The Finance Committee report. Ms.
Yes.
Townsend.
Mr. President, this was a meeting from May 20th of 2013, which was kind of a mid-year update on the finances. Mr. Tebben has submitted this committee report, which I think everybody has had, and it was full of good news, I think is the bottom line. So I would move that this report be received, filed, and approved.
Second?
The motion, the second, is to receive, file, and approve. The Finance Committee report is submitted by Councilor Tebben. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Resolution 913.
Proclaiming July 17th as Phyllis Diller Day in Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that resolution number 913 be adopted. Just be adopted on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to adopt Resolution 913 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
No, I mean, yes, sorry.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes?
Mr. Nieper? Oh,
He's
I'm
not
sorry.
I've been looking,
Why is not
Wake up, Deeper, where you at?
No.
I'm looking at Sam. Why are you not
He
talking?
paid her though. Sam got a little hair though.
Mr. McLean? Yes. Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tebben? And Miss Adams?
Yes.
And Mr. Nixon? I already
Yes,
called
you did call me, okay. Just checking. You got everybody all confused. Okay, Resolution 913 has been adopted on its first reading. Ordinance 14213.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Spiriani. This is a second reading.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that ordinance 14213 be passed on second reading.
Second?
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 14213 on its second reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
For sure, no. No.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper? Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
No.
Mr. Tebben? And Miss Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 14213 will be placed on third reading. The vote total was 4-2, requires 6 to pass it prior to third reading. Ordinance 14513.
Amending the 2013 annual budget.
Mr. President,
Ms. Townsend.
I move that ordinance 14513 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 14513 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper? Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tebben? And Miss Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 14513 has been passed on its first reading with a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 14613.
Levying special assessments for property maintenance code charges on premises in the city of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that ordinance 14613 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 14613 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I just wanted to point out that this listing of maintenance issues totaled $105,242.87. And that is funding that was expended from CDBG that could have been used elsewhere to help other agencies, other areas of the city. So I just wanted to make a note of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Is there any further discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes?
Mr. Nieper? Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tebben? And Miss Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 14613 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. 14713.
Levying a special assessment for demolition charges for dangerous structures in the city of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that ordinance 14713 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 14713 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I wanted to just make note of the listing. There were 16 listings, and of those 16, 8 were in the 5th Ward, and I'd like to publicly thank those that were able to get those structures down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Is there any further discussion? All those, I'm sorry, I have to vote on this one.
Yes, we do.
Have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? And Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 14713 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 14813.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for electrical services for the city's electric supply.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 14813 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 14813 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? And Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 14813 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 14913.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Indiana and Ohio Railroad Company for engineering services for the All Lima RRGS grade separation project.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 14913 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 14913 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? And Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 14913 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 15013.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Bluffton Paving, Inc.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 15013 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 15013 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe?
at this time, could Mr. Elstro maybe come forward and let the individuals know, maybe if he has a listing of the streets that'll be done, so individuals will know, residents will know.
Mr. President,
Mr. Elstro.
the list has been included on your packet. I'll be glad to read them. Also, this list will be posted at the city's website, so anyone from the community can go ahead and go to the website and find these streets. Additionally, for residents who are affected by this paving policy, and this paving contract will begin late August, early September, and I would think wrap up late October. The contractor will come street by street the day before. They do resurfacing, post along the affected streets, no parking signs, and that's a clear signal for residents to move their cars so crews can complete their work. The streets that are included this year are Maple Lane, north to West Wayne, Grand Avenue, center to Charles, West Grand Avenue, Charles to West, Scott Street, Vine to Michael, Reese Avenue, 4th to 10th, Central Avenue, 8th to 10th, Flanders, Finley to the railroad, Boyer, Flanders to the Finley Road, Center from Grand to Railroad, Vine Street, Oxford to Main, Hazel, Loretta Place to Nixon, Hazel, Nixon to Woodlawn, Prospect from Cook Park to Roosevelt, and Ritchie Avenue, Jameson to Delphus. The contract is for about $818,000. $300 of that is coming from our gas tax funds, our stormwater funds, general fund, and block grant, I believe. The nearly $500,000 is a grant from the Ohio Public Works Commission for state issue 1 funds. It's not as many streets as we would like to resurface, but it is a good step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elstro. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn?
just got a couple things. Any way that we can hold off on them from putting the tar on the curves, taking the curves away. This is one of the biggest problems. Now, constituents calling me about, do I need to put a sign up, say, please save the curve? Because they are not saving these curves. And people, over the years, they're not packed up, they're not taking them down no lower, they just continue packing it up. Is there any way we can stop that? We can talk to the foreman about this?
Mr. President,
Mr. Elstro?
the problems with curbs being buried goes back a long, long way. Some 15, 18 years ago, with new technology, there have been milling machines, and part of this contract does call for milling. So our engineering division makes the assessment in the field prior to these streets being submitted as to which streets can be milled. They are milled down 1.5 to 2 inches, and then 1.5 inches goes back on. Now, there are also areas where the curbs have been buried long before that 18 years occurred, and there is no remedy for that except for either street reconstruction or individuals going forward and placing curbs. We do have, again, one of our standing policies is the curb rebate program, where if an owner or owners go together and contract for curb replacement in front of their property, the city will rebate them $5 per lineal foot. That has been taken advantage of by a good number of people, but there's always sufficient funds for additional people to take advantage of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elstro.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
Mr. Elstro, I'd like to follow up on a comment about the curb rebate program. In these areas, and we spoke earlier today on this list, where paving of these 18 years of these streets where the curbs no longer exist or are buried, if a resident would want to put a curb in, do they have to put it back in the original grade of the original street or at the current elevation that it's at now?
That's a fine question. What we would encourage anyone to do, if they are interested in reestablishing curbs in front of their property, is to call the City of Lima Engineering Division, and we will have someone come out and take a look at that at their property. There are some streets, quite frankly, where installation of curbs, there probably isn't sufficient profile between the street surface and the curb lawn and the sidewalks or these people's front lawns. Case in point, Catalpa, Holmes, and Essex Drive. That area is just going to, by and large, require street reconstruction, and that's been a difficult problem for us because of the incredible expense that it takes to reconstruct streets. So if someone is interested in reestablishing curbs, please call us. You can call the 228-5462 number. Is that right? Or the engineering division is 221-5288. Or you can go online at the city's website, and there's a full listing of departmental numbers there. Please pick up the phone or send us an email. We'll come out and take a look at your property and let you know the feasibility of establishing those curbs in the place where they're interested in. And again, the 18 years was not a period of time where these curbs, it really is 40, 50, 60 years of resurfacing activities in the city that has buried those curbs. It goes back a long way. Thank you.
Mr. President, just a comment on my part, and it's to follow up on our conversation earlier today. The 5th Ward, 6th Ward, it's hard to find curbs, except for around the schools, where an effort was made and should have been made to put the curbs in. I'm hoping with the Kibbe reconstruction that will, have curbs. And it's not so much for the look, it's for the drainage. A lot of people's frontage of their property, becomes underwater. The drainage, the road is crowned and runs off. And The right-of-way is flooded, up to and over the sidewalks, and presents a lot of problems. And on the conversation that Mr. Elstro and I had, and he's welcome to comment, and I know money's tight and budgets have been cut and funding from the state, federal on down, but hopefully in the future, when we look at this, if we can find some funding, and I think he's looking into that, to start incorporating curbs being put in, as well as the paving, at the current elevation, or take it back down to its original, elevation. Because this is just compounding the problem. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Did you want to comment, Mr. Elstro, or?
I don't want people to walk out of here with false hopes, expecting that we're going to be adding curbs next year. The conversation that Councilor Adams and I had earlier in the day was the possibility of actually bringing in more revenue. And I don't know if we are maximized at our $5 permissive. That was what I told Ms. Adams I would check. If council thinks that new curbs are an important enough issue that we find new revenue, I am certainly supportive. But as those of you who sat in on the block grant hearings know, I stated that some 10, 13 years ago, what I said that night was the block grant allocation was about 1.3, and now we're walking away with, what, 260, something like that. So our own block grant has been reduced. I was wrong. That 1.3 million some 10, 12 years ago was actually 1.6 million is what the streets were being channeled. Additionally, gas tax revenue has been stagnant. As prices go up, people drive less. That's a major source of revenue for our street reconstruction. State Issue 1 is flat at this point in time. I certainly hope that all of you will recognize the ongoing support that you and your constituents will be required to do if you're going to continue that source of funds. But that's 800,000, sometimes $1 million or more that comes into the city for construction work. That goes to mainly total reconstruction or bridge funds and those kind of things. So money's tight. I'm certainly glad to look for new sources, and as I find out the answers, I'll share that with both Councilor Adams and all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elstro. Is there any further discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 150-13 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 150-113.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with West Erie Realty Solutions.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe?
I move that ordinance number 151-13 be passed on its first reading.
Second?
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 150-113 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? And Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 151-13 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 152-13.
Authorizing the mayor to apply for, accept, and administer an Ohio BWC Safety Intervention Grant.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn?
I move that ordinance 152-13 be passed on its first reading.
Second?
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 152-13 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? And Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 152-13 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 153-13.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Reineke Mazda Nissan, Inc. for the purchase of a 2014 Ford Focus.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn?
I move that 153-13 be, ordinance 153-13 passed on its first reading.
Second?
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 153-13 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? And Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 15313 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 15413.
Vacating a portion of Fisher Alley located north of East Wayne Street adjacent to the city's utility department.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe?
I move that ordinance 15413 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 15413 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 15413 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 15513.
Amending Section 1040.01 of the Codified Ordinances of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that communication 15513 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 15513 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean?
for people out in the audience, this is nothing more than languages that needs to be inputted into our section codified ordinances for the city from the EPA so that we aren't fined. It explains their terminology, and that's all it is for the next few ordinances we have. So that's what this is about for the next few.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McLean. Is there any further discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 15513 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 15613.
Amending Section 1040.12 of the Codified Ordinances of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean?
I move that ordinance 15613 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 15613 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 15613 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 15713.
Amending Section 1040.121 of the Codified Ordinances of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 15713 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 15713 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 15713 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Ordinance 15813.
Amending Sections 1041.143 of the Codified Ordinances of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 15813 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 15813 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ordinance 15813 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-0 vote. Miscellaneous business, Mr. Glenn. Thank you, Mr. Glenn.
I'll get cute. I got an hour here. Everybody hold your horses here. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that helped out this past weekend. You guys are super to help the kids out in our softball league. Thank you guys so much. We got our last game coming up this week, and the kids are loving it. It's the first time they ever played softball before. I love the people that come out helping me. And I know it's a tough time for me to get there every Thursday, be on time, pick all 15 kids up, and appreciate it. Also, we got night out. We got it downtown. We got it at Hoover Park. Hoover Park Neighborhood Association's having it. And we'll be doing book bags, school supplies, big balloons. We're also going to do a special memorial for Bonita Haynes. Miss Haynes passed away on August the 6th. So we're going to have people out there from the prison system coming out for the memorial there. So we hope everybody come out, have fun in both places. It's great that our city is having a big thing like this all over the world. Also, I'd thank everyone for helping me paint the house we did. I got so many thanks I could thank all day long. I'm going to say it one time. Thanks, guys. You guys are super. You know, when you go out and help people out that need help. And I know Keith, I'm not going to say Keith's last name, but Keith, you did a good job, went out and bought the paint. We painted 2 houses. Also, we're picking up paper. Please pick up the paper around the area, and I mean, just go around and keep it clean around the area, and we're doing a good job at it. You know, my schedule will go out next week. I couldn't get out this past week because I had a lot of busy commitments we already had made. We had to do around the area. So come on out to both places, have a good time, and be safe tomorrow night. It was night out, and everyone's supposed to be safe. Also, I'm going to commend the police department. Got to get that in there. I didn't bring my notes. I was a little late getting in. Thank you guys for the drug house there on 3rd Street. Thank you guys so much. And they came out and took care of that. And a lot of folks that called say it was great that it got done. And I will thank somebody else, though, but I don't want to put his name out there, though, but I appreciate all the work he's doing. And making phone calls. Continue making phone calls. If you want to better the neighborhood, you've got to call. And I know a lot of folks say, Deary, they're going to say something to me when you knock at my door. I'll meet you anywhere in the city. But we need to get them down. Just not the way of life. Drug house is not the way of life. I can't take them down by myself. I can't do it. I can't ride the whole Lima all night long when you make a phone call to my home. But I will try my best. And guys talk to me every day about drug houses in the neighborhood. Okay? One step at a time. We will improve our neighborhood. We are continue improving it. You see how the houses went down in the 5th Ward. That's great. That's a part of South End. That's great. We're moving in the right direction. We got I was going to bring it up to Amy about on 2nd Street. The dump truck's still there. They knocked the building down. They let grass grow inside the dump truck. So we need to check that out. A lot of church people, we got a convention, Baptist convention here. And they had all the churches in the 6th Ward today. People coming around the neighborhoods. They riding around. One of their tour is go around and see different things. They go into the Ricker Street. They see how them houses are built. A good neighborhood like that. A lot of good neighbors. Thank you guys so much, and all the volunteers. And I wish I could call all your name. Vicki, thank you so much for coming up to the podium today. Let the city know how bad we need to keep Sherrill Center open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Ms. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move, we didn't discuss this, but to excuse the absence of Councilors Tebben and Nieper and to approve the salary.
Second.
The motion and second is to approve the absence and salary of Councilors Nieper and Councilor Tebben. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries.
And I would also like to reschedule the HR committee meeting for August 19th at 5 o'clock. I know I haven't talked to anybody, but I hope that's convenient. 5 o'clock on the 19th, and that's to get an update on the civil service activity and to also discuss a tobacco-free campus. The possibility of.
Okay. That it?
She needs to refer that issue, doesn't she, to her committee?
Yeah, I was just going to ask. I don't remember.
It's never
No,
been
no. I mean, is that not,
Make a motion a second.
Just-
If it's a new issue, just move to refer it.
that?
Okay.
Okay, so the motion, the motion, and I think Mr. Glenn seconded it somewhere in there,
Yeah.
is to refer the issue of a tobacco-free campus, I believe for city-owned properties.
Yes.
To the Human Resources Committee. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you.
It was close, but it carried.
Where you gonna smoke at? Boy, next thing I have a problem.
Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of kudos to our city for having a great square fair this weekend. I know we had some rain on Friday night, but Saturday was a beautiful day. It looked like that everybody was downtown, everybody enjoyed themselves. I just hope that we can continue this for years to come because it does bring our community together. And it kind of reflects back on our National Night Out that we're going to have tomorrow night. You know, in our neighborhoods, turn your front porch light on and show solidarity that we're here watching out for our neighbors. And that's what our whole object is to help our neighbors and to be a community. So put your lights on outside your house at night tomorrow specifically for that reason. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Mr. Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to echo what Councilman Sam McLean said about the Square Fair. It was a good evening. The Toast of the City, I think, went very well. It was the first time that I attended one. I think it went very, very well. A lot of individuals got to really see what other individuals do. And it was very nice. And I had some young children with me that was really happy to be there, and they felt like they were celebrities for a moment. And so they had a good night. And my hat's off to, I don't want to name names because I'll probably miss somebody, but the individuals that put it together, great job. I got a couple things tonight. The East Side Neighborhood Association. I've had a lot of people come up to me and ask me what's going on. I'm just going to clear the air right now. East Side Neighborhood Association still exists. We have had a couple meetings since our new location. What is going on right now is thus. I am your city councilman. I do not feel that I need to be in the position of your president. So what I am requesting is individuals that live on the east side of Lima, 3rd Ward / 5th Ward, if they would like to become a part of the East Side Neighborhood Association, please contact me, because individuals need to be in place. I am currently holding the position of president, but I do not feel that it is right for me to hold the position of president. So that's what's going on with East Side. Individuals that want to come out, again, you can contact me, 419-371-3383. One of the other things that I would like to say is Ms. Sherrills came with this moonlight and music, and that date is September the 7th. I have talked with the Raven, and he's been speaking to me about it for a while. I actually know D. Major, gentleman that's going to come. He has plenty of videos on YouTube. He is a phenomenal, phenomenal musician. He has played with the likes of Tyler Perry, Destiny's Child, Boys to Men. He's been on several shows, talk shows, late night shows. He's awesome. I mean, awesome. And they're coming out of Atlanta, and they're coming to Lima. So I would hate for individuals to come all that way to come for a couple people. We need to support their efforts. And I'm big on jazz music, but I just wanted to say that this individual is, again, he's phenomenal. So please come and support that. I would like for council to receive a report via email from Chief Hefner concerning the last firefighters' testing and interviewing, why it was stopped and why no one was hired. And I would like to have that, if possible, within a 2-week period before August the 19th. Okay? Second thing was, I would like to make a motion to place the firefighters' hiring practices into the Safety Services Committee for review.
Second.
The motion, the second, I want to make sure I understand it, is to
The motion
put what?
is to place the firefighters' hiring practices in Safety Services Committee. And it's been seconded.
Okay, the motion, the second, is to put the firefighter hiring practices into the Safety Services Committee. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, if the motion is to talk about the hiring practices in general, in terms of civil service process, that's fine. But if the motion is to discuss the the current list and hiring from that, that's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for council to intervene itself in specific hiring issues. And discussion in general is fine, but not for purposes of specific hiring.
I made my motion. I made my motion.
Can you clarify what your intent is?
This is my intent. We had individuals who took the test. The civil service went through what they were supposed to go through. The individuals went through what they were supposed to go through. The test was taken. They got to do their interview, and come to find out there was other tests that were going to be given outside of civil service. These individuals were not hired, and the test was put to a halt. And as bad as we need firefighters, it didn't happen. So I'm asking for an explanation of why things were halted and why these individuals were not hired. So again, I would like to make the motion. Place the firefighters' hiring
Well,
practices.
you've made the motion.
Okay.
This is discussion. I'm
Okay.
just
That's
asking
why
for
I'm-
clarification of what your intent is.
That's the clarification. We had individuals that was ready to take the job. Matter of fact, one individual turned down the job from an area employer because he wanted to become a firefighter, and the day before the test, he receives a letter that we are no longer hired. We will no longer be doing interviewing. And what I'm asking is that we can get something in writing, on paper, via email.
I am, I guess, under discussion, I'm going to let you know that I'm not going to support the motion because
have to.
your indication has been that you're going after a review of individual candidates. And
No, don't put words in my mouth. What I'm saying is,
that is what you have said.
no, don't put words in my mouth, John. What I
Say
said
them more
was,
clearly.
I want to review, I want on paper why we tell the civil service to take care of the interviews, we tell the civil services to do the interview, we tell them to take care of the testing. When they get to the fire department, all of a sudden there's another test that they don't know nothing about. They don't understand why it's being taken place, and they want to know just as well as I want to know, why did we not do any hiring? Why was it to a halt? Now, we could sit here and sling mud, or we can go ahead and put this in the committee and let's talk like men. But we know why, but we want it on paper.
Okay.
And that's all I'm asking.
And I'll finish my comment. It sounds to me as though you're going after an individual review of
No.
specific candidates, and furthermore, I would like to see the request, the response and the report from the fire chief first.
That's why I
Because
asked for it to
I'm
come to
very
council.
concerned as to whether it's a safety services issue or a human resources issue.
Well, that's why I asked for it
And-
to come to council.
Well, I understand that, but I'm not ready to support the motion to refer that issue and review
You don't have to.
until we get the report and see what's in the report.
You
So
don't.
I'm just telling you
Okay.
why I'm not going to support it.
And I respect that, but we can still take the vote.
Well, I got to make it, Mr. President.
Mr. Glenn.
5 years ago, we had the same problem. We fixed it. Let's don't start new stuff when it come down to this issue. 5 years ago, we put them back on, gave their jobs to them. We gave the jobs to the people. When they made mistakes, they gave the jobs to the police officer. They gave it to the fire department. Let's stop playing the game and fix this problem. It's a problem we need to fix. We need to fix it. And we always try to stir around, make it out of a political problem when we trying to sit here and fix a problem that occur, and so this don't come an ongoing problem when these poor people went out and passed the test, and then they got it rejected from them. You know how they feel. We all got jobs here, or we retired.
Have
Wait
you
a minute,
had
Mr.
an
President, I'm
explanation?
speaking. I don't disrespect you. Please, don't do that. I'm not your child. We need to look at it. Thank God. You better believe it. It's very disrespectful of you. But the deal is, though, we need to stop playing this kangaroo thing every time it come down to something that we put up here. We got to stop it. Been doing it for years. Continue playing this game, this political game. It's a political game we need to stop. If it's a problem, let's fix it. If it ain't a problem, we can't fix it. But we always got to look around and see little difficult problems in there that everything, we got to try to chew it up and find policy, rules, regulations, why we can't do this. But we didn't find that out 5 years ago when we had a problem. Now, I've been there. Don't look at me like you don't know what we're talking about. If we want to do an audit on these cases, we'll show how many of them got jobs on that. I've been here long enough to see these things play, this political stuff play. So let's stop playing the game. We want to get our city going. Okay, we're tired of it. People are tired of it out there. People's not motivated no more to take tests in the city because they keep saying we're not going to be able to pass. We're not going to be able to do this. Let's stop it. Black and white people are tired of this way we play this kangaroo game here at City Council. And we always try to pick sides. Stop it. Let's look at it, find a resolution to it, nail it down, put our heads together and get it taken care of. Let's quit playing the game. It's not the way it's supposed to go. We know that. Let's look into it so it don't happen again. That's what I'm asking about.
What are the specific allegations that you're alleging? Because
Well,
I'm not aware of this.
Mr. President.
And you're not even giving the chief a chance to respond.
No, I'm speaking to the chief
Okay.
and respond. I'm the
That's
city
fine.
councilman.
You're
respond.
not giving anybody a
I'm the
response.
city councilman.
You're
gonna
making a
respond.
lot of allegations,
No,
Mr. Glenn, and you
no.
haven't backed up any of them with
They're
facts.
not allegations. Them are
That
problems.
sounded like a lot of allegations, Mr. Glenn.
These are problems we have over the years, Nixon.
Okay.
Okay, these are problems we have over the years with your outrulers talking.
It's okay, Mr.
You've been
Glenn.
playing this
What
game
I'm
for
saying
years.
is,
It
you're
doesn't
making
bother me.
allegations
No, I'm
without
not.
any basis
No, I'm
in
not.
fact at this
No, I'm
point.
not. I'm
You've
doing
not
it.
laid one fact on the table.
Well, it's not a fact. You don't let him talk. You didn't lay a fact on the table. You didn't lay nothing on the table. You still
Because
at
I
your
said,
same-
let's get the report from
you
the
still
chief
at your
first and
same
then
way of
make the
doing
decision.
things, Nixon.
Okay?
Nixon,
You're
you
fine.
still at the same way. The chief, you speak. If you guys need to stop this.
We'll just vote on the motion.
Mr. President.
All those in
Mr.
favor, I'll come up. What? Mr. Lowe?
Very disrespectful.
Man,
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Glenn.
I don't accept it.
the bottom line is this. Things were
Do it
done
outside.
out of order. A lot of individuals, we keep talking about this diversity within our city,
That's
and
right.
we need to be straight up. And it's such a spirit of hopelessness when you see young individuals do what they're asked to do what they're required to do, and then they get told the day before a test that no more interviews are going to be taking place. Games got to stop. And all I'm asking is that council receive a letter stating why things happened the way they did. I've made my motion. It was seconded. All we had to do was vote.
Okay. Mr. McLean?
Mr. President, I'm kind of at a loss of words with what happened here tonight, but I can say that I think that we need to listen to Chief first before we make any voting, if we don't mind.
I don't disagree with you.
I think his input's going to
I
help
don't disagree
me, determine which way to go with it, but I do feel that if we're after a solidarity of hiring people, and if there was something that went on, I'd like to know what went on, and that's all I'm asking is to get some information from him before we vote.
And before the chief speaks, Mr. McLean, there are two different things. Mr. Lowe made a request, not part of the motion, but a request for an explanation from the chief. I have no problem with that. I think that's the prudent thing, if there are questions, that's the prudent thing to do. Then, his motion, however, that's on the floor, is to refer the issue of a review of the hiring practices to the Safety Services Committee. I have a problem with taking that step until we get the explanation, because the explanation may resolve those questions, okay? Then we get into a diatribe about games, about this crap's been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of allegations, no definition of the games, no facts, no facts laid out on the table, and that's where I have a problem with it.
Let's let the
Okay?
chief talk.
And that's why I won't support the motion, because I think it's premature until we have the report.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe?
the reason I requested the report is because this is my fourth year on council, and I cannot tell you how many times we've had discussions, and at the end of the day, it wasn't placed on paper, and then we hear, that's not what I said, or that's not what I did, and that's not what happened, and that's not what I meant. So that's why I was asking for a report to be sent. It's okay. He could sit here and explain all night. I still want it on paper. He could sit here and give us what he feels is justification for what happens. I want it on paper. And then I'm going to bring the rest of what needs to be brought. And that would be discussed whenever Safety Services chooses to call this committee meeting. It's already been seconded.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I would like to ask Counselor Lowe, because I've heard two things on this process, that they were tested. Then I heard at your last comment previous to you just speaking that they had gone through the interview and the testing was stopped and not conducted.
No,
So I don't know
Okay.
where we're at in the process.
The testing was taken. The interviewing was taken. The third step is to talk with the firefighters. Once they got there,
And that's when,
that's what I want explained.
okay.
Because they received a letter stating that no more hiring or no more interviewing was going to take place any further. Now, there's several people in this room that's sitting here like they don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? And I'm trying to be decent. Okay? Only thing I'm asking is put it in the report, send it to us. You got 2 weeks. Let us know what happened. But in the meantime, we still need to set up, because after we read the email, we're still going to say, well, can you explain, can you explain, explain. There's no reason why the motion can't be made to put it in the committee now. If it just as well as our committee meeting got canceled last Monday, they can get canceled again. If the email verifies what's up, then we say, cool, we don't need the meeting. We cancel the meeting, we move forward. Otherwise, it's already set in place.
So tests were conducted and interviews, and the third step was not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chief?
Mr. President, while I'm not prepared to discuss the entire issue, I am prepared to correct some misconceptions. We did have a test. We postponed the interviews. We still have a valid test with valid candidates on it. There was no second test being proffered, and I'm not sure where that came from. So at this point, we still have a valid test. All we have done so far is postpone the interviews. And I will comply with anything council requires, but I'm not prepared to speak on that right now.
Okay. And with you saying that, Chief, with all due respect, please make sure you include why they were postponed. Please do that.
That would be part and parcel of the explanation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
The motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
So there were
4-2.
4-2. The motion does not have the majority of council, so it does not pass.
It's fine. Went through the process.
Ms. Adams?
The only thing I have this evening is it's been touched on the National Night Out here in the town square. The highlights of the activities tomorrow night, and they're from 6 to 9 p.m. The police will have demonstrations, mounted posse will be here, self-defense demos, youth and adult activities will be conducted, live music, free food, and animated characters will be in attendance. So hopefully the weather will cooperate, and I'd like to follow up on Councilor McLean to turn on your porch lights as well throughout the city to show our support of this evening tomorrow night. Thank you.
The only thing I have this evening is I need to make a motion that we adjourn into executive session for the purposes of real estate.
Second.
I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Oh, yes, I have to do that, don't I?
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper? Mr. McLean?
No.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin? And Ms. Adams?
Yes.
The motion approves. Council is adjourned into executive session.